everyone. Feel free to be on video, to be hidden, whichever you prefer. It's your evening or afternoon to do as you please. So we're gonna wait just, one more minute to get started. We will be actively monitoring the chat tonight to keep an eye on questions, comments, concerns, anything you need, and we'll be throwing links in there throughout this evening as well for you to easily access additional information to the conversations had, but we really want to make sure this is a conversation. So this is just kind of like a Q&A open style. We'll introduce ourselves and then dive in, but we are really grateful for you all taking a bit of time to be with us today. Very much so. So grab some water if you don't have any while we wait just like 1 minute to get started. Elliot and I are like, let's be hydrated. Yes. Ooh, Raleigh. I was raised mostly in Greensboro, so nice to see a Tar Healer. All right. Well, thank you everyone for zooming in. Throw where you are hanging out from. A lot of North Carolinas today, Bay Area, Missouri, all over the country, which is wonderful to see. Lawrence, Kansas, very charming. So hi, I'm Sarah Marsom. I'm a heritage resource consultant based in Ohio. I am happily the co-chair as of this year of the National Council on Public History's Nominating Committee. Mary Kate, who are you?
Everybody, I am Mary Kate Zelensky, and I am one of the co-chairs for the New Professional and Student Committee here at NCPH. Outside of that, I am also a PhD student at Boston University, and I work for the Newport Restoration Foundation as a collections assistant. And just a little overview of what our committee does is we advocate for new professionals and students. We try to provide resources, including the Public History Navigator, and then we also put on events like our social at the conference, which I recognize some of you here. And then we also have our public history hangouts, which are virtual events, which we have one upcoming next month. But I'll hand it over to my co-chair, Michael, to introduce himself.
Hi, all. I'm Michael Yee. I'm a lecturer at Cal State University San Marcos and also at San Diego Miramar College. I've been a past chair for the San Diego Chinese Historical Museum, so you can ask me about that. I have that, great combination of academic and museum experience. And I'm thrilled to be working with Mary Kate as we try to advocate and just provide benefits for new professionals and students.
Wonderful. And Stasia and Stephanie, take a moment to introduce yourselves because we wouldn't be here without you two.
Stasia, you go first.
All right. Hello, I'm Stasia. I am NCPH's membership coordinator. Where offices are based in Indianapolis.
And Stasia is an excellent example of transitioning from an internship to a job. She was a fantastic intern for us when she was in the IUPUI program quite a while ago, and we're so excited to have her back. I'm Stephanie Rao. I'm the executive director for the National Council on Public History, and I'm excited to see all of you and just want to say a huge thank you again to Sarah and Michael and Mary Kate and Stasia, who are really the brains behind the operation here today.
Thank you. So like I said, when people were starting to trickle in, we're going to have this as like a conversation Q&A format. We've got pre-prepared questions to go with, but if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat Or if you want to use your voice tonight, that is totally a-okay as well. Just, raise your little virtual hand and unmute yourself, and we'd be happy to hear from you as well. So we're going to start with discussing the new student board position and the nominating committee. Those are the elected positions. And then we're going to move on to what the students and youth professionals committee does as well. So Michael or Mary Kate, what's our first question?
My first question, Sarah, is just could you tell us what is the role of the board? How are committees set up? How does it function generally for those who may not know?
So the board for every single nonprofit operates a little bit differently. They all have bylaws, which are required as a part of their 501c3 status, which create the constructs of which a board operates and how people get positions. Some boards are fundraising boards, and you'll see that where the board members are big donors, and that is one of the income streams for a nonprofit. The National Council on Public History has a wonderful working board, is how we would colloquially call them in the field. And as the working board, the board members are using their expertise and their time and energy to assist the National Council on Public History achieve their long-range planning goals and their larger organizational goals. Committees are wonderful because commonly committees can host events and educate and engage. The board is really going more into the details. How should this organization grow? How can this organization achieve its mission and its impact? It's really diving into that. So as a board member, you use your expertise to assist in whatever manner. Stephanie, how would you describe the board as the president who gets to hang out with them?
They're definitely a working board, and a lot of that has to do with the size of our organization. We have 3 full-time staff, so you have 2/3 of us here tonight, and we serve about 1,600 members, and so our board really, they are a hardworking board. They help us think through the big questions of how we can best serve our communities, keeping in touch with committees to make sure we know how all different sort of areas and segments of the field are working and what they need. And so we have a really kind of collegial working board that we try to ensure represents kind of all corners of the field. And so that's one of the big reasons behind creating this new student position. Is this is a huge segment of our organization and they are not represented on the board. And so let's fix that. And they are a fantastic, really collegial group of people. They're all public historians. So they approach their board service the same way they approach their public history work, and focusing on sort of centering the voices that make up our community rather than focusing on their own like personal individual perspectives.
And it's important to note, public historian, we define that pretty broadly, I say, at NCPH. So, it can be oral historian, it can be historic preservationist, it can be an academic historian. It is the wide range of how you choose to self-define as a public historian.
Great. Well, I have a follow-up question. How do you see like a student board member contributing to the board, since it is a working board? You mentioned kind of bringing a new perspective. Are there like certain things you're hoping that a student board member will bring to this position?
I'd first like to shout out Alana Graves, who is the woman who encouraged NCPH to establish this student board position. She brought it up at the conference in Atlanta. And I think that's a really great example of how NCPH takes its members' feedback seriously. And as someone who previously held student board positions, I think it is a really good opportunity for professional development for them as an individual. It gives you an opportunity to know how a organization functions on an operational level, to start to review budgets, to go into those kinds of details. you know, I'd love to hear how Stasia and Stephanie think the student board member should work, because I think we're all going to have different answers for this. For me, I think, you know, it is important for a board to have demographics that reflect its membership, but also the wider audience that they're serving. And as a student, you have the real opportunity to highlight what emerging and shifting trends are in the field. You have the opportunity to be a voice, not just for how work practices may be shifting and evolving, which you perceive in a different way as a new professional than as an established professional. But also, you know, you can express what the workplace needs are for emerging professionals as well, which is a tenet of the new strategic plan launched by NCPH, wanting to make sure that the labor needs and the workplace health of public historians is being considered. So it's really just an opportunity for you to not necessarily speak on behalf of all other students, but to have that opportunity to ensure that the next leaders in the field are at the table.
Yeah, to build off of that, I would say I'm really excited about launching this particular position in this particular moment, because as Sarah mentioned, we've just launched this new long range plan. Labor issues are a huge piece of the plan. And we have a fantastic board that spans careers from kind of early to mid-career to people who are more senior. And we have a lot of folks who run public history programs or teach, who I think have the best intentions of being able to represent the needs of their students. But I'm sure there are things that students and emerging professionals are struggling with that are not shared with their faculty or shared as widely. And so I think this is a really fantastic moment to make sure that we have some of those voices at the table in the meetings. And I think it's a great way for us to kind of help shape younger public historians or people who are earlier in their careers to be able to have the training to take on these kinds of positions in the future and do good work, because NCPH could have the best board at this moment, but if we're not mentoring new future board members, you know, then there's a much steeper learning curve. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm also happy to share that when Alana brought this idea to us at the conference and we brought it to the board and to the nominating committee, everyone was enthusiastic right off the bat. And it was not an uphill battle. It was really just about, you know, most of the discussion centered around how do we make this a good experience for the student. So that just warms my heart.
Switching gears a little, logistic-wise, what are the responsibilities for the student board meeting? How often does the board meet? Is there work outside of these meetings? Just kind of what do you expect from a student board member?
The NCPH board meets monthly, right, Stephanie? Thumbs up, for an hour, except for 2 longer board meetings in the year. And one of them is held at the NCPH annual conference. And one of the perks, actually, of being a student board member is that the other board members have committed to sponsoring that individual to attend the national conference. And that means if you are elected for the 3-year term, which this is a 3-year commitment, you will have the opportunity to go to Salt Lake City next year, Montreal in 2025. So it's not just a opportunity to have the professional development in the meetings, but you also get to come to the annual conference. So in these meetings, that's where you are part of the larger discussions and the discourse. But if you check out one of the links that I shared in the chat for the current board members, you'll see that many of the board members are in other committees, and board members also get their assignments at the board meetings as well. So it's not uncommon, for example, for board members to be encouraged to send out annual campaign for the fundraiser emails. You know, that's one specific example of a smaller type of activity you may be given. What other examples of work do board members do, Stephanie, beyond long range planning? You know, what's a smaller initiative?
Yeah, so we will often, when we have our monthly virtual board meetings, we'll kind of brainstorm and dig into a topic. And then sometimes we'll ask for a few board members who have capacity that are interested in working further on that to kind of take that on. So we have a group of board members who have, you know, they saw a need for more kind of community building among committees. And so they've, you know, those 3 or 4 board members have kind of agreed to be keeping an eye on that process and making sure that we're communicating and checking in with committees. We have another group of board members who realize that because not all of our board members are coming from the nonprofit world, they don't all have experience on other boards. And so there's some kind of basic training that they wanted to be able to have. And so this group brainstorms topics that the board might be more interested in learning about, and then we create kind of optional volunteer opportunities. So for example, a few months ago, we offered an opportunity for any board members who wanted it to do a really in-depth dive into how to read the budget, for example. But those kinds of things, we try to be really conscious that these are volunteer board positions and everybody has their, you know, job that pays them that they're responsible for. They obviously should be humans outside of that experience. And so we try to work on a model where we're consciously not overburdening anyone and allowing people to kind of pick and choose those extra opportunities that either are fulfilling to them personally or are going to help them in their career in a particular way. But in the monthly virtual meetings, we cancel sometimes. If we don't have anything to talk about, we don't have meetings just to have meetings. And that those monthly meetings are great because they allow us to really focus the in-person time at the conference on things that are harder to do on Zoom. But we try to be really conscious of, you know, we used to always meet in person in the fall and we aren't this year because the board felt strongly about the environmental impact, time away from families, the fact that we didn't have enough money in the budget to fund everyone's travel. So we're meeting on Zoom. So it's a pretty kind of group decision making.
And last week we had a conversation where there were multiple past and current board members present, and all of them applauded Stephanie's timed agendas for meetings to ensure things aren't running over too much. And they just really reiterated that this is not a situation on a board where there's just a few individuals doing the work. It really is teamwork and camaraderie. And I think that's really important to emphasize. I personally have had a couple negative experiences on boards where it's like 2 people doing everything, but like this is not the case. This is a team collaborative effort.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Follow-up question is, if someone does want to be put up for the student board position, how does the nominating process work? And can you talk a little bit more about the nominating committee itself?
So the nominating committee, we are also elected individuals. And so you can choose to self-nominate to be a nominating committee member if you would like to, or you can self-nominate for a position on the board. Feel free to go rogue and you don't just have to select the student position. You could run for any of the positions if you really wanted to. So all of these are 3-year commitments, and I will include the link on how to self-nominate. So as a nominating committee member, what we do is we create a database of individuals who've self-nominated or people who we think would bring beneficial skills to the NCPH board. And these skills that we're looking for, they directly reflect the long range plan. So I recommend looking through the long range plan. Are you like, heck yeah, I really could help with pillar 2 or whatever pillar in the long range plan? Like, are you like, I feel confident and enthusiastic about that? Or maybe it's just an area where you're really interested in and you're like, I'd love to research more about this in my time to help them achieve that goal. So as you're looking towards self-nomination, I recommend, you have to put your name, you have to put a little bio. Why would you be great at this position? And toot your own horn. Like, don't be scared. Have your friends help you create a little bio if that will help you. I have my friends help me with my bios because sometimes it's hard to see your personal and professional strengths, and connect those to the larger narrative because we want to know how you can help achieve the goals. So as nominating committee members, we look through the long range plan, and then we also meet with Stephanie and the executive committee to talk through needs. So we're looking at skills, we're looking at where someone's geographically located, and we're looking at their ability to commit to a 3-year position. We want someone who's able to be there for the full term. And so the nominating committee, we create this great list of people, and the people who self-nominated are, of course, a part of that. And then we start really diving in. I'm looking at your LinkedIn. If you do not maintain a LinkedIn, please, I highly encourage you to do that. People do recruit for jobs in our field through that, so it's worth maintaining. If you have a website, we're checking out your websites. We're just looking to see how you are communicating your strengths, because on the nominating committee, we are once again representing different sectors in the field, so we all have different familiarities with the individuals we're discussing, and we're trying to create as much of an even playing field as possible. So for the nominating committee, we've got our numbers of positions that we need to fill. We have our number of people we have to recruit, so we're recruiting X number of people each year for an election slate. And then we start to reach out to people. And this is reaching out to people to be like, hey, are you still interested? Or, hey, we've nominated you for this. We think you'd be great. Are you interested? To see if you are willing to move through this process. Because once you are on our short list, then we need things like your bios, which are then publicly promoted for the election. So really, we're trying to make this more transparent. This is the first time the nominating committee has ever had these public educational opportunities hosted to present what the experience looks like. So we want it more transparent and not behind the closed doors where people just like playing chess behind here, no man from Oz situation. So yeah, a lot of it is just identifying strengths and correlating strengths with NCPH's long-term goals, and then also geographic, which helps with NCPH's long-term goals of being a national organization. And this is my second year doing it, again, 3-year terms, and it's, I think, a really great opportunity to ensure that a board is reflecting the different sectors, reflecting different needs in the field. It ensures that we're having a healthy conversation and it's not just people speaking in a silo. Anything else you'd like to add, Stephanie or Stasia? Okay. So I threw in the chat, there's a link to the self-nomination form. You can nominate your friends if you want to give them a confidence boost, or if you think they're great, or you can nominate yourself. It is not weird to self-nominate. I would just like to really emphasize that. There's nothing weird about doing that. Heck, if you want to nominate yourself for an award, because award nominations are currently open for NCPH as well, nominate yourself for that. There's no shame in tooting your horn. You're here because you're committed to the field and you do great work, so you might as well celebrate that and see if others want to join you at the party.
I'd like to, jump in and kind of ask a follow-up question for you, Sarah, and this could be also for others. So you talked about, I guess, including the information. Can you speak a little bit if there's a bit of a two-stage process? One is during that initial self-nomination process, and then there's maybe another stage if there needs to be a follow-up, a little bit about how that might work.
So I have a meeting in a week or two with the full nominating committee, where that is when we are going to be reviewing the self-nominations. And that is when we'll really start to move in earnest. I think Brenna's asked a great question of, do we have a deadline for nominations? And I don't see one on the website, which is something we should fix.
Yeah. We usually determine it based on when the nominating committee wants it to close. So
we'll be closing it mid-September. Let's say that. And we will make sure to have that website updated very soon, because we have to do on the timeline of when the election happens. So the nominating committee, we get together and we have a group conversation about everyone who's self-nominated. As of September 6th is when I believe the next meeting is. So ideally, if you want to be in our first round of consideration, have your self-nomination in by September 6th. You all get the scoop because you all came to the party. So that's when we have the conversations, and that's when we start to really dive in on honing in on what do all the strengths look like, who has what. And that's kind of, it's called a board matrix. That's what it's called in the nonprofit field, where a board matrix looks at, how many boxes is a person checking. And I'm not sure if that's going to be our process continuing. We're currently reassessing it, but that's how it has been done in the past. So we go through that vetting process. You would hear by the end of September if we want to see if you're still interested in pursuing this position. And again, you can put yourself up for nominating committee or the board. It doesn't just have to be the student board position. And then once you reach out, then you give us all the information we request, which is basically just a nice professional bio. And we provide you examples of what those look like. And then the election gets public, and then you are allowed to passively or actively or not campaign for yourself at all. When I was up for vote for nominating committee, I shared it with my friends who I knew were members. But if you don't feel comfortable for doing that, you don't have to do that. But members are the voters. You can't get your mom to vote. Your mom may try, but unless she's an NCPH member, she does not get a vote in this situation,
she's
unfortunately.
welcome to join. Just saying.
I am sure Joe would love to. But yeah, so the nominating committee, a lot of our work is in a condensed period of time. We start these conversations end of spring, early summer, and then we're basically running to make sure we have a strong election slate by end of October. As a nominating committee, we are currently reassessing to a certain degree what all we do, because we think we should be doing more than just putting together an election slate, which is why we're having this information session today. And we're just looking at the ways our committee can be most effective at what we do. Should we have more members in our committee potentially? What type of written material should we have about these positions? That's what we're kind of looking at in the future. So in theory, we'll go from like a committee that's active 4 to 5 months out of the year to a 12-month active committee.
If I may jump in with kind of a second related question, and it has to do also with, the level of involvement. So having been serving as on a nominating committee for a different organization, Balboa Park, 1915 in the image behind me, I see value in people participating actively in committees, and then that as showing as a track record for then board membership. And so I was curious if what to extent that is considered during the process.
Yes, we do look at, and Stephanie and Stasia sent me the list. I sent them, some preliminary names of people who've already self-nominated or people we've been brainstorming, and we're asking, are they members? Are they previously served on committees? What type of engagement have they had with the organization in the past? And Elliot, I see you raising your hand. So what's up with you?
So I had a question about I asked the chat, but I didn't know if you had seen it. It was because it's a 3-year position. If I were to self-nominate myself, get nominated and get elected for the position, and I graduate in the middle of my tenure, how will that work?
Stephanie, you take this one.
You will stay on the board. This was one of those like nitpicky conversations we had when we were amending the bylaws, because we didn't want it to be just a 1 or a 2-year position. One, because it doesn't mirror what the rest of the board does, but also because a lot of your first year is just like getting up to speed and feeling comfortable and like what's happening around you. And that's true of all board members, no matter how much experience they have. So we decided that it should be a 3-year position, but that people move in and out of positions in this field all the time, and people's plans in graduate school change. And so it's that you need to be a student at the time of the election. But then if you leave your program, you continue your tenure until your term is up. So we tried to kind of limit those barriers there.
It's also worth noting, it does not have to be a public history degree being pursued. It's just an intention to be a public historian as a profession. So, you could be getting a public administration degree or, Mexican American studies, anything. Brenna?
Hi, yeah, I was wondering, is there like a type of student you had in mind for this role, whether it be undergraduate or graduate students? I'm about to enter a graduate program, but I'm just wondering. Okay.
Totally
No.
open. Totally open.
I think we just said has to, be older than 18, essentially, not an elementary school student, even though I'm sure they would be great. But
Eating's a lot more interesting, actually.
It'd be great if History Day is any indication, these are the people we should be listening to. Wonderful. But Michael, you really did a really nice segue of how can committee service be a really wonderful way to segue toward board service. So I'd love to ask you and Mary Kate a few questions about the Student and New Professional Committee. So first of all, how do you two choose to define new professionals? Have I been working in the field too long to be one?
That's a great question, Sarah. I don't think we have a definite answer. I don't know if NCPH has like an official definition. Stephanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But generally we think of like new professional within 5 to 7 years of starting your career, but that's different for everybody because, people have second careers or they go back to school and they're still in a new position. And so it's a pretty loose definition, I would say, for us. But I don't know if Stephanie has anything more definite to that. Okay. Or if Michael wants to add anything.
Well, I'll just add, briefly, I'm a new professional second career public historian, so just a few years out. So, and I think that's one of the great things about this field is that you can come in from so many different directions.
Could not agree more. All right, so someone chooses to maybe want to join the Students and New Professionals Committee. What type of activities do you all do as committee members, internally or externally?
So we do a couple different things, and our committee's kind of subdivided itself into 3 working groups, we call it. One is communications, which is they run our Twitter. So if you're looking to see what we're up to, we do have a Twitter that I'll put in the chat and link to. We also have a programming committee, which works on, we have that social event that I mentioned that happens at the annual meeting every year. And then starting with COVID, we've really been doing these public history hangouts, which are virtual events, which is a way to get a bunch more new professionals and students who might not be able to make it to the conference. And so we do those on various topics that are relevant to our community. For example, in September, we're having one about the poster sessions at the conference and how to submit them, kind of the process. We've had past ones about like government historians, like what does a government job look like? How do you do USA jobs? All that type of stuff. And then we also have our member resources working group, which recently has been working on the Public History Navigator, which is about picking a grad program or an undergrad program in public history. But with the new long range plan, we have a lot more fun things that we're going to be looking into, like mentorship, like job shadowing, a bunch of different things. And so we're going to be doing a lot more with that. But those are kind of the main three arches that we work on. Michael, do you have anything to add? Nope. Okay.
Well, I think all of that sounds delightful, and especially important to host those workshops on how to apply for USA jobs. That's cumbersome. So this is really one of the most important questions, though, is why did you choose to serve on this committee, and how do you find serving on this committee is helping you pursue your personal and professional goals?
You want to go first?
I see Mary Kate is signaling. So, well, I thought that, I wanted to be able to contribute to the profession. And, I could see that it's an active, organization. And in some ways, I think the student aspect, I think, intrigued me because that's a membership who can provide some different perspectives for NCPH as a whole, for the board, for the executive, for the staff, and really provide that kind of, emerging feet on the ground perspective on how are they being affected by public history and all the new perspectives, and maybe as an example, as the social media landscape is changing, having the perspective of a student serving on different committees or on the board, that is a vital, perspective that I think it would be really quite valuable.
And then I would say I joined for a couple reasons. One is just to meet people. It's a great way to network and meet people outside of the conference, to know people before the conference ahead of time. I know all the committee members and we can meet up. And so it's just a really great way to kind of connect and learn more about NCPH as well. I had never even heard about NCPH until Lacey Wilson tweeted about it and was like, join the new professional and student committee. And I was like, oh, what is this? This is right up my alley. And so it was just a great way to like learn about the organization, even if you're new to it, really do a deep dive. And also I just really like helping like fellow new professionals and students find opportunities for them, create resources for them, and just be able to help other people out.
Wonderful. Lacey Wilson and Priya Chaya were my gateways to NCPH. So my background is more historic preservation, architectural history, but as I've worked in the field for a decade, I am more comfortable calling myself a public historian or just a cultural heritage consultant. And through more than 10 years working in the field, I've done a lot of unpaid labor, which has made me very particular about what kind of volunteer opportunities I choose to commit to, because I'm looking for skill development, emotional fulfillment, and how does this tie to my larger professional goals? So when I was approached for the nominating committee, this was my first volunteer opportunity with NCPH, and since then I also served on the conference planning committee for this year. So, you don't necessarily, like Stephanie said in the chat, have to have prior ties to NCPH to be in the pipeline for elected positions. But I know that I was nominated to be on this committee because people like to jokingly call me the Kevin Bacon of historic preservation. You're 6 degrees separated from me, probably. Like, I guarantee with everyone in this room, we could easily make that happen. So that's why they brought me in. They're like, Sarah knows a lot of people who work in different sectors across public history, she would be good to ensure that we're not just asking the same people. And I found it to be incredibly fulfilling because it's given me a deeper understanding of how NCPH operates. And I really appreciate NCPH as a national organization for listening to their members and continually finding new ways to provide support systems, whether it's the gender discrimination, sexual harassment research and report that was launched, to the fact that labor initiatives are now part of the strategic plan, to the fact that there's things like the Grumpy Hour hosted by the Consultants Committee. You know, there's a whole range from whimsy to serious that NCPH presents because they know us as practitioners, regardless of where you're at in the field, like we need support, silly stuff and serious stuff. So I've just really enjoyed that. And I think it's a really nice path toward maybe in the future I'd consider becoming a board member, because you know, this has allowed me to have that deeper knowledge so I could confidently move toward it if time, energy, election allowed for chance. So I think it's really important as you all in the audience are considering what you choose to do for your unpaid labor, you know, really think meaningfully about how it fits into your time, your energy, your skills, your interest, and how you're choosing to grow your knowledge through your service and your network as well, because we all know networking and building friends, networking up, down, all around, that's what really matters. So that kind of ties into a question from Sarah Baker of what does your average time commitment for these positions look like? I did not keep track of my time for nominating committee last year, but I would say last year it probably ended up being 20 to 30 hours for the year, which really is pretty nominal if you think about it as a 12-month, you know, looking at it from 12 months blocks. So for the board, you're meeting on average an hour a month, except for the 2 longer meetings, which Stephanie, those are what, 3 to 4 hours?
The one at the conference is about 4 hours, and the fall meeting is usually no more than 5.
So 5, 9, okay, let's say 15 hours of board meetings a year, 15 to 20, and then your outside work, which Stephanie, once again, like earlier in this conversation, she reiterated you can choose based on your capacity how much time and energy to give. So I would say on the high end, let's say someone's giving 40 hours a year as an NCPH board member. So you can split that up across 12 months. That's really a reasonable commitment, which I think is, again, a reflection of how this is a working board. This is a working nominating committee. It's not just a singular individual carrying the load. You all are collaborating and doing the work together. Any additional questions, thoughts, concerns? No. Oh, I don't believe we covered it all. What are we missing? Stephanie, what would you like to say to, okay, how about like, you know, like someone's not necessarily done a public facing position like a board because, you know, you're listed on the website, you know, you are somewhat of an ambassador for NCPH if you're a board member. So what would you say to someone who's been more introverted? Maybe they work in the collections. How would you encourage them to have a voice to feel confident speaking at a table like that?
I would say that for one thing I really value about our board is that we treat each other like humans as much as we do public historians, and there are a lot of introverts on our board, in different kinds of ways too, right? Like I'm an introvert, but I can do these things when I have to do them. It just means I need to go like sit in a room with my cat when we're done. But there are lots of different opportunities to be involved. You could focus the kinds of work that you do outside of the meetings on more of the kind of research rather than just, hosting programs like this, for example. And at board meetings, we do, I would say, the leadership on the board, our president and vice president, do a lot of really conscious work to make sure we're finding different kinds of ways to get people's feedback. So when we meet on Zoom, there are board members who never unmute themselves and speak, but they're really active in the chat because that's what they're comfortable with, or vice versa. We also have board members who will reach out to me or a fellow board member privately if they're like, I'm not sure I understand this. And we all try to support each other in that way. And we also the board reviews themselves every year too. They do an anonymous survey where everyone can really share their open opinions about, like, am I ever afraid to voice my opinion? Do I feel like we are having robust enough conversations? So we do an individual anonymous survey, and then the board spends one of their meetings talking about that and trying to think about how we could do better. And one thing that we heard during COVID is, we had board members who'd never met each other in person before. And that year in the survey, we really saw that people were struggling to make those connections. And so we started doing optional coffee Zooms to just give people a chance to chat privately. The board created a WhatsApp so that they could share, like success stories or pictures of their kids or, whatever, share restaurant recommendations when they're traveling, things that, like, you don't necessarily want to clog your email up with, but kind of help us all feel more comfortable with each other. And so that's one thing I really appreciate, is how much the board cares about being a collective unit and making space for everyone to come as they are and as they feel comfortable.
And Maddie asks a really important question that we forgot to answer. Aside from student position, how many members are on this particular board? And it's worth noting that the board terms are staggered. So, the student board member would be coming on with, I believe, 3 additional new board members. So, it's not like you would be the only new person coming on. So how many board members are there total right now?
There are 17 total with the student position. So we have a president, a vice president, and a past president. And we have a secretary who takes notes at the meeting. We have a treasurer. And then there are 12 elected positions so there are we call them classes of 3 board members that come in a cohort, and then this student position. So you would be coming on with 3 other new board members. We have, again, with the working closely with the nominating committee and with our board, we have really ramped up that kind of orientation process to try to help make sure people are feeling comfortable. And incoming board members also get a mentor board member, who's someone who's been on for a couple of years already, and who you can go to if you're like, I have no idea what this spreadsheet means. And if you're not comfortable asking that in front of everyone, you can talk to them. And then also when you come to the conference in person, you have someone that, can grab coffee with you and, help have a familiar face when you come to your first meeting.
So Stephanie, I think the real question is going to be for you is, what happens when we have 20, 30 plus wonderful students pursuing this board position? Will we be able to lead a revolution and have it be an all-student board? Maybe.
Anything's possible, They really jumped at this one opportunity. So I know this is going to be a really tough decision to make, but I'm really excited to see this get going. And also, like the board isn't the only thing, the nominating committee isn't the only thing, and there are lots of ways to get involved and lots of ways to access our board too. They're a fantastic, friendly, approachable group of people. And I think, you know, at the conference in Atlanta, Elena, who suggested this idea, I think was surprised when she came to the staff and said, I had an idea. And we said, well, here's the board president, tell her. And she listened. And so, you know, Stasia and I are available. We are a small office. And so if you don't end up, if this position doesn't end up the right fit, or you don't make it on the ballot, or you don't get elected, but you have ideas, come to Mary Kate, come to Michael, come to me, and we can get you involved. And even if official, you know, service isn't the right thing, but you have a need that you want to see filled, we can, you know, work together to explore those ideas.
And I threw a link in the chat that shows committees, and you know, there's a range of committees depending on your interest, again, and your time and what you're interested in. And there's also the working groups on top of the committees if you're interested in joining those. I'm part of a labor working group. So, you know, there's lots of different ways to engage with NCPH depending on where you are at on your professional pathway. And we're just really excited to launch this opportunity. And I again want to applaud NCPH staff and board for taking the feedback of the members seriously when choosing how to edit and update bylaws, and also how to support committees and working groups and to launch initiatives to support us all. So any other final questions? Because we want to be mindful of your time. You probably have dinner to cook or to eat. Nothing. All right. Well, Mary Kate and I have thrown our emails in the chat. Do not hesitate to follow up with either of us with questions. We're happy to answer them. And again, if you would like to self-nominate, you know, tell us a bit about where you live, what degree you're currently pursuing, or if you're going to be transitioning from degrees, say, you know, undergrad now, going to be pursuing a grad degree. Say what inspires you. Why do you want to be on the board? You know, I do selfishly because it makes my life easier, you know, call out specific parts of the long range plan that connect with you. It's very easy to read and digest long range plan, I will say. So, you know, just skim through that, and even skimming through that will help you see if this makes sense for you now, or maybe it makes sense for you to self-nominate next year. This is, you know, you can self-nominate for the board or for the nominating committee. There's vacancies every year. This is not a one-time chance for you to pursue this sort of opportunity. So thank you all for attending, for being here today. Mary Kate and Michael, thanks so much for collaborating on this event. I really appreciate it on behalf of the nominating committee. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Michael and Mary Kate and Stasia. Bye.